Oh, another loss. Too bad, was exclaimed by the con artist, his smirk widening with feigned sympathy. Would the nobleman have played again if he'd known his fate? Behind their delicate fans, some of the ladies couldn't help but let out stifled giggles. You can see how he gestures invitingly at the passers-by, drawing them closer to the makeshift gambling stand. Something exciting is always desired, especially within these secure walls where life often turns dull. Losses were inevitable for those who played, though none of them would ever suspect. A few coins had already persuaded the daily guard to conveniently look away during these shady dealings. People in the middle ring, unlike the wary residents of the lower ring, always seemed more willing to throw their money at chance. Scanning the gathering, the con man let his gaze rest on a figure who lingered just beyond the crowd's edge. "Who dares to test fate against me?" he declared, beckoning challengers with a grand wave of his hand. He must have appeared to ponder while caressing his finely groomed mustache with exaggerated flair. His fingers shot out to point directly at the man, drawing curious murmurs from the spectators. Only when the crowd turned to look at the chosen man did they finally see any response. One might guess that the tilt of his rice had obscured most of his vision, offering little more than a shadowed glimpse. As though sensing the crowd's attention, the man slowly lifted his hat, revealing a scarred face with one eye shut and the other hidden beneath a scarf. The scammer's grin widened, believing his next mark would be easy prey with such limited sight. "Who, me?" the man asked, his finger tapping his chest in feigned disbelief. Despite the tone, he stepped forward with quiet interest, eyes fixed on the three identical cups. "Anyone can play, it's quite simple," the scammer said with a warm chuckle, lifting the center cup to reveal the pebble beneath. "Just select the right one, and your bet will be matched and doubled in return. Wouldn't you say that sounds like a fair deal?" A thoughtful hum came from the man, his hand resting against the scarf hiding his chin. Eventually, the man reached into his pouch and pulled out a sack that jingled with weight. Clinking onto the table came a generous pile of gold coins, enough to make the con artist nearly salivate. "You think you can double this?" he asked with the innocent tone of someone about to be duped. "Oh, a bold wager," was the cheater's amused reply, his mustache twitching with smug confidence. "Let's hope your luck matches your bravery," he added as he covered the pebble and prepared to shuffle. Now, imagine his hands as blurs, darting and twisting with professional misdirection. With each pass, the pebble slipped beneath a cup, or so the audience was meant to believe. But then something strange happened, a sensation of the pebble falling into his lap. Still pretending, the con artist continued his display as though nothing had changed. The shuffle slowed, finally ending with the cups right where they had started. "Your move, my friend, choose wisely," he said with theatrical flair. Each cup received a careful inspection from the man, who tilted his head this way and that. With a tap to the middle cup, he gave his answer, "That one." "What a choice," the con artist exclaimed, his hand already moving toward the gleaming pile. Too bad for him, the crowd's collective gasp stopped him in his tracks. There, plain as day, sat the pebble beneath the middle cup exactly where it shouldn't have been. He glanced down, heart sinking when he realized the stone in his lap had vanished. "How is this possible?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Looks like today is my lucky day," the stranger said with crescent moon eyes hinting at mirth. Sitting in stunned silence, the con artist could only gape at the simple pebble on the table. A finger scratched at the man's temple, shifting the rice hat just enough to reveal a shock of silver hair. "I believe that belongs to me," he said, nodding at the coins. Without protest, the scammer handed over the heavy pouch, utterly defeated. The stranger accepted it with a respectful nod and vanished into the departing crowd. Despite his striking appearance, he was lost from view the moment he turned his back. Pocketing the stolen winnings, Kakashi mused aloud whether he might find a decent bowl of salt-broiled sari and miso soup. A mouthful of sand greeted Kakashi when he woke, something that should not have been possible with a mask on. There also shouldn't have been a desert, considering Konoha had no such landscape during Pain's invasion. Death had seemed certain when Pain's attack killed so many, including himself. Stranded in a wasteland of sand, Kakashi realized his situation was anything but normal. He pushed his face mask aside and spat out gritty sand, grimacing. Pain from his shoulder and empty chakra reserves confirmed the battle with Pain had been real. Still, this shouldn't be happening, he should have died, end of story. Koji would soon be warning Tsunade, assuming events played out as expected. Meanwhile, Kakashi should still be buried beneath rubble, surrounded by fallen comrades. Yet, there was no village here, just an endless expanse of sand. Though panic wasn't in his nature, he felt the edges of it creep in at the thought of Konoha being erased. Digging into the dune, Kakashi began to crawl upward, desperation fueling him. The slope proved steep, forcing him to stumble and climb awkwardly to the top. Upon reaching the summit, he gazed across the horizon and saw nothing familiar. Even landmarks from Suna were nowhere to be found. A single stone tower in the distance was the only thing to break the monotony. Running a hand across his face, Kakashi struggled to make sense of the impossible. Desperate for clarity, he bit his thumb and prepared to summon aid. "Kukios no Jutsu," he called, forming the signs with practiced ease. A puff of smoke appeared, yet no companion came forth. He hesitated to try again, the fatigue nearly overwhelming him. With emotion masked behind his still features, he struck the sand with a frustrated fist. Where were his Ninken? Why hadn't they come? Staring once more at the tower, he questioned whether it was even worth the effort. Still, hope for answers drove him down the slope like a child sliding awkwardly. Had he only packed a soldier pill, the journey would have been far less agonizing. Rising slowly at the dune's base, he looked more zombie than shinobi. Something kicked up sand behind him, and he turned cautiously. Over the dunes came a sand sailboat, gliding on miniature whirlwinds. 3 figures rode it, but no headbands or shinobi gear marked them. Maybe they're friendly, Kakashi thought, an optimistic assumption. The craft veered in front of him, halting his progress. 2 riders leapt off and began shouting in a foreign tongue. He tilted his head in confusion, not recognizing a single word. How strange that they weren't speaking the common tongue of the elemental nations. The third remained aboard, casually manipulating the sand beneath them. Kakashi watched the unnatural tornado spiral beneath the boat, utterly unfamiliar. "Yo," he greeted with a lazy wave, masking caution with casualness. "Any idea where I am?" he added, though he didn't expect a useful answer. The 2 bandits exchanged glances, confusion and suspicion in their eyes. Then they resumed shouting, louder this time. Hands lifted in unison, and Kakashi prepared for a fight. They weren't forming seals, but something else began to happen. Streams of sand crept up his legs, intent on trapping him. Could these people be sandbenders like Gaara? Suffocation loomed if he didn't act immediately. Without pause, 2 kunai flashed and found their marks. Their cries cut short as they clutched their throats in disbelief. Scarves soaked in blood fluttered as the men collapsed. Kakashi moved forward, unfazed, as the final rider screamed. A wall of sand burst upward, shielding the survivor. But the boat was already fleeing into the dunes. With no immediate threat, Kakashi retrieved his kunai. Looting the bodies revealed hidden pouches and coins. There wasn't a single paper bill among the unfamiliar currency. One scarf was relatively clean, so he took it to disguise his appearance. The face beneath the cloth remained twisted in frozen shock. Trimming the cloth left him enough to conceal his signature features. His jacket would draw too much attention, so he packed it away. He peeled off his blue long-sleeved shirt and replaced it with the stolen one. The spare bag slung over his shoulder now held everything important. A water skin and dried meat offered a small comfort. While poison was a risk, their amateurism made it unlikely. Still, Kakashi only tasted a sliver of the meat at first. Minutes passed, and when nothing happened, he finished the rest. Caution repeated with the water, sipped slowly. Replenished slightly, he resumed walking toward the tower. The sun beat down mercilessly as noon approached. Soon as shinobi must have had iron wills to tolerate this heat. Finally, the tower loomed close, silent and ancient. Kakashi circled it, looking for a door but finding none. Strange spirals decorated the brick walls like a cryptic map. A single window waited at the very top. If nothing else, it offered shelter from the sun. Channeling chakra to his feet, he began to climb. Each step was methodical, careful not to waste energy. Within minutes, he perched on the windowsill and peered inside. With a sigh, he removed the scarf now irritating his scalp. There was no floor, just a hollow cylinder lined with gold. He scratched his head, clearly not expecting this setup. Entering such a place could be dangerous, he reasoned. Then came the wind's whistle and the looming sandstorm behind him. With the storm deciding for him, Kakashi descended into the tower. He landed softly, the chakra control steady. Owl-shaped carvings stared down at him with eerie intensity. No one appeared to greet him or question his intrusion. Behind each owl arch stood countless bookshelves. They stretched into darkness, promising unknown knowledge. But Kakashi, utterly drained, ignored them for now. He slid down the nearest rail like a lazy student. Exhaustion claimed him at last, his eyes drifting shut. Somewhere nearby, feathers rustled in the air. He figured birds must have wandered into the abandoned library. As sleep took him, he missed the massive, feathered shadow landing at his feet. Nightmares of his village torment his sleep. Had Kamui been stronger, could Koji have been saved? Let it be known, Pain's powers never reached Tsunade's ears in time. Pain towers above fallen allies and loved ones, the blonde corpse beneath him a chilling sight. All over Kakashi's body, ghostly hands scramble and tug, pulling him into the soil. Why am I not screaming awake, he thinks with bafflement. The tension in his body coils tight as the presence of another is silently sensed. Do not stir, he tells himself, better to feign sleep and regain composure sightlessly. Remaining in the place he drifted off, he notes the absent sunlight and wonders, how long has it been? Some tall figure stands between him and the pale green glow of the torch to his right. High above his seated form, it looms like a silent monument. Breathe evenly, he must not give himself away. A voice, male and ringing with strange echoes, addresses him from nearby, I know you're awake. Finally, understanding floods him, someone speaks his language. That fact alone is enough to make Kakashi worry. What if it's another shinobi? When his eye opens, the last thing he expects is a colossal black barn owl to be the speaker. An involuntary sound escapes. No summoning scroll he knows could have produced this creature. Kumo's birds? No match for this intimidating owl. Kakashi's disbelief is met with the owl's quizzical tilt, as if evaluating a pest. You've lingered long enough. Humans are barred from my library, it declares sternly. Standing slowly, Kakashi offers a mild apology. My bad, I'll just be on my way then. Might it mind if I use the arches for climbing to the ceiling? He wonders silently. But before he acts, the owl's head juts forward alarmingly close to his face. What language is that? It asks, suspicion sharpening its tone. He blinks, utterly confused. Excuse me. With a ruffle of feathers, the owl flares slightly as if insulted by Kakashi's ignorance. I am Wan Shitong, he who knows 10,000 things, and yet your language is alien to me. Trying not to flinch, Kakashi hazards a conversational tone. Name's Kakashi. If you don't know what I'm saying, how are you speaking it? A derisive scoff emerges from the owl. Spirits speak across mortal tongues. You hear my words in your own language because that's how the spirit world works. Now, human, answer me. A being with 10,000 pieces of knowledge might hold the key to his return. So you've never heard of the elemental nation's language? I know them well, but yours is none of their dialects, comes the answer, final and firm. Only 4 nations? That spells trouble. Kakashi's silence says what his words cannot. You're lost, the owl observes flatly. He offers a weak smile. Was it that obvious? Wan Shitong hums thoughtfully. You'll want to understand this world, I assume. But humans have misused my books for war. I no longer offer them freely. Kakashi must access those volumes somewhere in the stacks. Lies his way home. I'm not here for war. I just need to understand where I am, and how to return. After a long pause, the owl relents, feathers settling. Knowledge for knowledge. Give me something to add to my trove. Rummaging through his gear, Kakashi evaluates what might be appropriate for an ancient archive. Blades and tools are too valuable. What's left? 2 books lie with him, and he can hardly give up his prized possession, or can he? Fingers trembling, he retrieves a green book from his pocket, heart aching. Sacrificing a piece of his identity, he holds it out. Here. The book, Ika Tactics, leaves his grasp as Wan Shitong takes it with a wave of a wing. It vanishes in the air, as tears nearly betray him. Untranslated text. Its script is similar to this world's. This will be enlightening, remarks the owl. Very well, you may explore my collection. But betray me, and you won't receive another chance. Feathers expanding in grandeur, the owl dives into shadow. Watching it vanish, Kakashi scratches his head and murmurs, thanks for the help. But where to begin? The library sprawls before him. A yip interrupts him, and turning, he spots the unexpected. Oh, the irony, he remarks. A brown fox, scroll in mouth, stares him down. Their eyes lock for a beat before he dares to ask, know where I can find books on dimensional travel. Though it doesn't speak, the fox bolts down the aisle. Pausing to check, he follows. Step for step, Kakashi follows it deeper into the endless library. Eventually, it stops beside an unassuming shelf. Grabbing a volume, Kakashi flips it open and sighs illegible. Looking back to the fox, he asks, can you help me learn the language? The fox's head tilts, visibly judging his literacy, but it turns and trots away. With no choice, Kakashi keeps pace. Eventually, the fox drops its scroll and scales the bookshelf like a ninja. Is it using chakra? Kakashi wonders aloud, nearly activating his Sharingan in response. Returning with a thin book, the fox drops it into his hands. A glance at the title confirms it's a children's reader. If you could laugh, I bet you would be, Kakashi mutters. As a peace offering, he pulls out a Ninken treat from his pouch. It catches it expertly, munching happily. Any chance there's food in here I can eat? He asks hopefully. The fox's whine says otherwise. Didn't think so. Thanks anyway. Snack devoured, the fox grabs its scroll and trots off. Settling against the shelf, Kakashi cracks open his first lesson in this new world's tongue. Time slips away in the library's quiet depth. Sunlight fades, and the emerald glow of the torches becomes his only guide. A growing pile of books marks his progress. Reading staves off sleep, which is fortunate. His rare naps offer no rest, only corpses from old nightmares. Each time he wakes, food and water await him, the tip of a white tail vanishing from view. He toys with naming the fox Naruto. His chakra gradually replenishes, and with basic healing jutsu, his injuries improve. Wan Shitong occasionally passes by, his silent presence a reminder of vigilance. They exchange no words, only nods of mutual respect. Kakashi suspects the owl checks more to avoid moldy corpses than for goodwill. Once he surpasses child-level books, he unveils his Sharingan. With it, absorbing grammar and vocabulary becomes far easier. Genius has its perks. At last, he returns to the original stack the fox introduced him to. A new pile begins, one centered on spirit travel and dimensional theory. No mention of shinobi worlds appears, only crossing between the physical and spiritual. Suspecting the worst, he turns to history volumes. Not a single shred of evidence points to his homeland's existence. Instead, the world of benders unfolds before him. Chi-not chakra guides their powers. He reads of the 100-Year War and shudders. Even a veteran of the Third Shinobi World War finds it monstrous. Where ninja are mentioned, they're mythologized, not recognized. Lying flat, Kakashi stares upward, wondering if he'll ever see Konoha again. That mere thought guts him. A soft whine draws his gaze downward. A wet nose bumps against his temple. "Yo, Naruto," he murmurs, placing a hand on the fox's head. "I guess I'm stuck here. I left them when they needed me most. What do I do now?" Even as he speaks, the foreign words feel clumsy and alien on his tongue. Naruto licks his hand, then tugs at his sleeve. I'm coming," he replies. In silence, they cross through the library's depths. Other foxes slip between the shelves like shadows. Naruto leads him to a chamber lined with scroll boxes. Murals adorn the walls, depicting unknown scenes. Naruto licks a paw, mission complete. Stepping forward, Kakashi studies the murals. Each figure is named as an avatar. A faded spot draws his eye. Startled, he finds his own face in one of the murals. The painting is dulled and faded, but the silver hair and leaf headband are unmistakable. His eyes are closed, his hand clutching at Chidori. There is no artist's name, but a label reads, "Silvered-haired stranger, the lightning cutter saves our world." They described his technique and his hair. This can't be coincidence. A cold anger surges within him. Who dared steal him from his world to fix theirs? He takes the painting in hand. The shuffle of feathers warns him of company. "I thought you seemed familiar," says Wan Shi-tong. "Mind telling me what this means?" Kakashi holds up the scroll. The owl sniffs at his broken phrasing. "I rarely care for origins, only the knowledge within," he says. Looking closer, he adds, "You seem destined to save this world." "But I already have a world to save," Kakashi replies, his voice bitter. "Perhaps," the owl offers, "your return lies beyond this task." "I've never seen your case before," the owl admits. "I should preserve you and study you." Noting the owl's blank expression, Kakashi backs away slightly. Gripping the scroll, he replies, "Yeah, not planning to be stuffed today. Hope you don't mind, but I'm keeping this. A map would be helpful too." The owl doesn't move. "No world means no knowledge, right?" Kakashi adds with a smirk. "That earns him permission. Take one from my seekers. Return it intact." Kakashi accepts, though he intends never to return. They move to the tower entrance. Naruto waits, scroll already in mouth. He trades the scroll for the last of his treats. The fox accepts it and vanishes into the shelves. Turning to the owl, Kakashi bows. "Thanks for caring for me, Wan Shi-tong. Hope you enjoy the book." The owl coughs delicately behind one wing. "Yes, well, good luck, Kakashi. You weren't the worst guest." Looking skyward, Kakashi calculates the time. "Any chance of a lift?" he asks. Only silence answers him. "Thought not." Jogging, he ascends a pillar upward and outward. He does not see the owl and fox exchange puzzled glances as he disappears into the desert sun. The descending sun casts longer shadows, which makes the ancient map slightly easier to decipher, helping Kakashi determine which direction is north. The aged parchment flakes at the corners, and most town names have faded into near illegibility. He begins to doubt whether the map still serves any practical use given its deteriorated condition. The desert Kakashi now wanders across seems to dominate the central portion of the map, assuming the pale shade and absence of landmarks are accurate indicators. On the sandy section of the map, there's a small puncture like a mark left by a claw or sharp fang. The curve of Kakashi's exposed eye hints at a smirk, appreciative of the fox's subtle guidance. Still, the question remains, what direction should he take from here? The expectation is clear: Kakashi must somehow save the world to find a way back home, but the scroll offers no real direction. Settling onto the rooftop of the tall tower, he pulls the illustrated scroll from his bag once more. He decides to follow his own maxim, look underneath the underneath, and re-examines the scroll for any overlooked detail. It's only now, in hindsight, that he realizes he never thought to check the reverse side of the scroll. Turning it over, he finds a curious marking in one corner: concentric circles roughly drawn in black ink. There's no text alongside the symbol, but the precision in the circle's lines makes it clear they were added purposefully. Looking down at the map in his lap again, Kakashi notices a nearly identical pattern etched on its surface. Positioned northwest of the desert, the symbol encircles a large area, with the outermost ring bending to encompass nearby lakes and mountain ranges. Smaller rings within the largest one gradually become more symmetrical as they approach the center. He compares the design on the map with the one on the back of the scroll and confirms that they are indeed a match. Kakashi concludes that this is likely the best clue he's going to get. He rises, folding the scroll and map back into his pack. Scanning the horizon, he spots a stony outcrop in the northern distance, a potential place to take shelter during the day. The current temperature is manageable for travel, though the trek by foot to reach the structure will be lengthy. He pulls his headscarf over his face again and shapes the ram hand seal with his fingers. With a puff of smoke, Kakashi vanishes in a Shunshin no Jutsu. He reappears closer to the sand, some distance from the towering library, but still far from his destination. Deciding to preserve his chakra for true emergencies, Kakashi opts to continue on foot through the arid wasteland. As he jogs, he fishes out one of the fruits the fox had given him, taken from the plate of offerings, and eats it. He's also been slowly refilling his water supply using the bowls left behind. However, even with careful rationing, the dry air drains his water reserves quickly. By the time he's halfway through his small canteen, he's starting to feel the dehydration set in. The only visible plant life is the occasional cactus dotting the otherwise lifeless horizon. A few quick-footed lizards dart across the dunes on hind legs, the only other living things he sees. As he finally reaches the stone landmark, dawn breaks in the east and the heat begins to intensify. The boulder formation is riddled with enormous cavities. Peering inside one of the holes, Kakashi discovers the interior coated in thick, cloudy honey. He briefly speculates whether this world has massive spirit beasts too. At least, he notes, the floor of the cave appears free of filth. A deep humming noise echoes from within the cavern. From the shadows, he sees large, airborne shapes closing in. When the light hits them, they're revealed to be grotesque hybrids of vultures and wasps. Quickly pulling a kunao from his pouch, Kakashi braces himself as the leading insect lets out a piercing cry. Though he can't see how many are still hidden deeper within, 3 of the creatures are already closing the gap. Kakashi brings the blade across his torso, mentally preparing himself to strike. The beasts come hurtling toward him, their wings whirring ominously. As one lunges with an open beak, Kakashi pushes off the cave wall and meets it mid-air, slashing its narrow neck. The creature's head and torso spiral apart, crashing separately onto the rocky ground. The others are unbothered by their ally's death and continue their assault. Kakashi weaves between them, cutting into wings, limbs, and hardened exoskeletons. The relentless swarm keeps pressing in, and the floor grows sticky with their black blood. He ducks under one and spins around another, slicing deeply into vulnerable parts. Dead insects begin to clutter the ground, making it harder to maneuver. Seeing no end to the wave, Kakashi leaps back and returns the kunao to its pouch. His fingers form a flurry of hand seals before he cups one hand near his mouth. Katan Gokakyu no Jutsu, he declares, releasing a giant fireball into the cave. The flames ignite the honey lining the cavern walls, fueling the blaze. Screams from the scorched creatures echo off the stone. As the fire travels deeper, it exposes the blackened remains of the bird wasps. Looking to the other holes, Kakashi sees surviving wasps escaping into the open sky. A few dive toward him with screeches, but he dispatches them with ease. The rest vanish over the horizon, though they may return. For now, he chooses one of the cleaner openings as a temporary shelter. He muses briefly on whether this world has any ordinary animals at all. Forming another sequence of seals, Kakashi slams his palms to the ground. Doton Doriyuki, he calls, raising a wall of earth to block the hive's main entrance. The sun continues its climb, the temperature rising to sweltering levels. Kakashi leans back against the newly formed wall, grateful for its coolness against his skin. He keeps a kunao in his grip, alert for another wasp attack. Behind his eyelids, he sees Kanaha's ruined crater stretch before him. A glimpse of pink hair trapped beneath rubble and a girl with purple face markings staring blankly skyward haunts him. The memorial stone still stands, its shadow casting long over the destruction. When Kakashi turns around in the dream, he sees Pain's orange hair and Rinnegan glaring at him. Pain lifts Naruto's limp body by the throat and gestures accusingly. "You caused this," Pain accuses, extending a hand that morphs into a metal rod. The rod thrusts forward, piercing Kakashi's heart. The physical pain is minimal compared to witnessing his home in ashes. When he jolts awake, the sun hangs overhead, but the time and date elude him. His limbs ache as he pushes himself upright, every joint complaining. He drinks from his water pouch and finds it nearly empty. There's still no visible end to the endless sandscape surrounding him. To gain better visibility, Kakashi climbs atop the stony hive. Scanning the distance, he spots several beige tents with crimson flags fluttering above them. He guesses it's a merchant camp based on the tiny human figures milling about. Hoping to exchange coin for provisions, Kakashi sets off in their direction. He bounds off the rock and jogs through the open sand toward what he hopes are allies. This time, no one tries to ambush him as he nears the largest tent. Beetle-helmeted traders simply stare at him, understandably baffled by his lone arrival on foot. Fortunately, his bandit-style attire doesn't provoke any attacks, allowing him to enter unchallenged. Although, Kakashi does pause at the sight of an enormous beetle, though it's no stranger than some summons he's seen. Through some bartering despite the language gap he manages to obtain food and water. He even secures a few extra canteens after negotiating with a practiced eye. If they were attempting to cheat him, they quickly change their tune when Kakashi gives them a subtle, unsettling smile. While purchasing fabric from a smaller tent, Kakashi notices two sand skiffs gliding into the camp. Their passengers wore clothes resembling his own disguise. Kakashi keeps his face low, finishing his transaction while monitoring the newcomers. They're dragging a massive creature behind them, its limbs barely moving. A pair of merchants walks over to speak with the newcomers as Kakashi tucks a dark blue blanket into his bag. Before reaching another stall, a loud bellow makes him pause. The animal is unlike anything he's seen, a huge six-legged bison with a wide tail like a platypus. A long arrow mark runs along its furred forehead, though Kakashi can't tell if it's dyed or natural. Ropes bite into its limbs, and it's obvious the animal was bound too tightly. A polished box exchanges hands between the sand raiders and the beetle merchants. The group begins dragging the beast toward a sleigh reinforced with restraints. Suddenly, the bison bucks and throws off a merchant with its powerful tail. As the raiders vanish with their money, the beetle handlers scramble to subdue it. One produces a set of blow darts, and the bison collapses under their effect. A saddle rests on its back, confirming to Kakashi that it belongs to someone. If it had been the bandits' mount, they would have ridden it in rather than tied it up. As a man who has raised Ninken, Kakashi despises mistreatment of animals. Seeing its strained breathing, he knows he has to intervene. He approaches the beetle-wearing men with a casual wave. "Yo," he greets cheerfully. "Sandbender," one snarls, "how dare you pawn off this unruly beast on us?" "Hey, you've got the wrong guy," Kakashi says, brushing it off. "I'm not with them. But I'll be taking the bison." The pair exchange glances before erupting in mocking laughter. "Why would we do that?" one gasps through chuckles. "A circus would pay a fortune for this thing." Back in Konoha, circuses were mostly banned after the Inyazuka clan protested their cruelty. Kakashi figures an already trained animal wouldn't fare well under such conditions. With a disappointed sigh, his lone visible eye narrows with intensity. A blur of movement places Kakashi between them with a kunao at their necks. A hush falls over the encampment. "Because otherwise," he says coldly, "you'll all be dead, and I'll take it anyway." Though he rarely threatens civilians, he deems it necessary this time. Both merchants tremble as the blades press close, drawing a line of red from one's throat. "Oh okay," the merchant on his right shouts. "Take the bison. Just let us live." Tears spill down their cheeks as they collapse into the sand. Kakashi glances at the stalls and sees everyone else hiding. He turns his gaze back to the nervous beetle beside the unconscious bison. With a light smile, he tells them, "I'll be needing the beetle too, if that's alright." No one dares object. Mounted on the oversized insect, a bizarre experience, Kakashi returns to the stone cave. Inside, a couple of wasps have returned, but he dispatches them without issue. He severs the sleigh's bindings with a single stroke of his blade. The beetle shifts, puzzled by the change. Apparently more intelligent than normal animals, it still lacks the sentience of a summon. "Go on, you're free," Kakashi says with a gentle wave. The beetle scuttles off into the desert sands. Hopefully, nothing larger is out there to prey on it. Turning his attention to the slumbering bison, Kakashi loosens the remaining restraints. Leaving a few ropes in place just in case, he steps back cautiously. Its thick white fur makes it poorly suited for this harsh, sun-baked terrain. As twilight settles in, the cooling sand provides some relief. Kakashi rests against its warm body, one leg up and his arm lazily draped. Pulling off his head wrap, his silver hair spills freely into the breeze. Though he fights sleep, the dreams eventually catch up to him.